Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Welcome.
Oh, it's okay.
Sorry, do you want to start that
Hi,
over?
everyone. My name is Marnie Dow. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Involvement. Craig, you want to go say hi?
Hi, my name is Craig Shook.
So Craig is going to be our guest presenter for today. I'll let Craig tell you a little more about himself. He's our program coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life, and he is going to be our guest presenter. He's going to talk about how gaming creates leaders. I've been really excited about this presentation for a while, Craig, so take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Marnie. And thanks for the invite to present today. So welcome to today's presentation, How Gaming Creates Leaders. It is going to focus a lot on a particular model of leadership, but I'm going to connect that to some different ways to play. So who am I? Or first, an outline. So we'll first talk about a little bit about me, who I am, why I'm even talking about this topic. Then we're going to talk about the specific model of leadership that I'm going to use today. I'll connect that to some different ways to play, whether that is sports or some sort of virtual game, tabletop game, anything like that. I'm going to talk about some ways that you can find those opportunities yourself at UNLV, and then some closing and questions. So who am I? Like Marnie said, I am the program coordinator for Fraternity and Sorority Life in the Office of Student Involvement and Activities. That's here at UNLV. In in-person operations, we are up on the 3rd floor of the Student Union. I'm also a member of Phi Kappa Psi, which is a national fraternity affiliated with the NIC. It's usually an IFC chapter. That's how I got into the work that I do currently and how I got into talking about leadership and different ways to understand leadership. I'm also a Dungeons and Dragons a dungeon master or a DM. That's a hobby I've picked up a little more in the pandemic. That turns out to be one of those things you can do really easily virtually. But I've got some experience with that running back for a while. I love role-playing games and tabletop games. I'm a huge nerd for video games as well, especially your like turn-based strategy stuff. So really, this is a connection of those two worlds for me. Two things that I'm really passionate about, and I'm excited to get to tell you about them today. So first, let's talk about what leadership is. This turns out to be an incredibly difficult and complex question to answer. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of definitions of leadership. It's been a topic that's studied by psychologists and sociologists. Lots of different theories have developed over the past couple hundred years. And some of the main questions that researchers have tried to answer about leadership are, is it natural born talent or something you can learn? Is it accessible to everyone or only a select few? Is it something you can even quantify, or is it something that is just natural about the universe that we can't really describe? I tend to take the view that there are many different types of leaders. There's lots of different types of ways to talk about leadership, and that everyone has some natural tendency that they can hone in order to become a better leader. So everyone can be a leader, and as long as you lean into the things that you're naturally good at, then you will find a leadership style that works for you and a way that you can connect with the people around you. Now, it turns out that there is a really great leadership inventory to talk about this kind of stuff. I should put out a disclaimer before I dive too deep into that there are lots and lots and lots of leadership inventories or personality tests more often that claim to tell you what type of leader you are. Be really careful with how many online personality quizzes you take or how much stock you put in them. They are all useful tools that can give you ways to describe your reality. But they're not always research-based, or sometimes they're just for fun. So do be careful how much stock you put in that kind of stuff, how much of your personality you design around those sorts of tests, because they're really supposed to be tools for you to learn how to talk about yourself, right? They shouldn't be something that dictates the way you live your life. So I always like to put that disclaimer out there whenever I talk about leadership inventories, because there are many, and many of them disagree. So just be careful. That being said, I'm going to tell you about one specific leadership inventory that I think is actually pretty useful. It is called Clifton Strengths. Um, Clifton Strengths is, there we go, is a leadership assessment designed primarily by a man named Don Clifton and his work with the SRI, which later merged with Gallup. But Don Clifton served during World War II, and afterwards came back to the States to research human psychology at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And in his studies at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, he realized that most of the psychology work that he was reading was about what is wrong with people. It's disorders, illnesses, diseases. It was a very negative approach to human psychology, and that makes sense, right? Lots of medicine, which psychology has a lot to do with, is about like fixing something that is wrong with someone. Now, psychology, in the field of psychology, it gets a little tricky. What is wrong? But that's what he noticed about his work. And having served in World War II and seen some really darkness in humanity, Clifton decided that he wanted to take a positive approach to human psychology instead of the negative approach he was seeing in his texts. This has come to be known as appreciative inquiry sometimes. Really, what he was doing was looking at a person or a team's strengths, possibilities, and successes, and how to enhance those instead of looking at a negative aspect of someone. And research has found that over the last few decades, since appreciative inquiry has become popularized in psychology, that tends to be a good approach. While teaching from 1950 to 1969, he founded the SRI, which is the Selection Research Incorporated, which focused on consumer research and personnel selection. That later merged with the polling firm Gallup, which you may be familiar with from polling for really major United States elections. But Gallup does a ton of work across the polling spectrum. So in this partnership and during his time teaching, Clifton developed hundreds of instruments that he claimed could predict the success for specific jobs and workplace cultures. But that wasn't super useful for the individual. So after developing all of this work for organizations to be able to tell who would be successful at their organization, he turned his attention to how he could help individuals better understand themselves and their own leadership styles. So in 1999, he finished an online assessment, one of the first rigorous online psychological assessments, which was the first iteration of Clifton Strengths Finder. It is a really long assessment. I forget exactly how many questions, but it's quite lengthy. You could finish it pretty quickly though, because it asks you to rate on a scale of not likely to very likely, or not like me to very like me, just a range of topics. Since then, thousands and thousands of people have been surveyed and their results reincorporated back into the Clifton Strengths model. At the end, everyone gets a personalized report based on your responses to the questions, and a number of top themes, which I will talk more about in a second. Clifton Strengths is in its third iteration and has a large body of scientific work to back it up at this point. Gallup is very proficient with polling and has done a lot of work to reinforce and reassess their own ways of talking about leadership. I should also say about Clifton Strengths that while it's a great tool in my opinion, it's not free. So I want to give that disclaimer in case anyone is more curious about it or wants to take the assessment themselves. I do think because of its research background, it is one of the better assessments out there. But it's not free, and for the full assessment, it's not cheap. So that is something to know about this assessment in particular. But now that you know some history, how's it structured? Well, Clifton Strengths splits leadership up into 34 key themes. So while designing the assessment, Clifton interviewed leaders from all walks of life, you know, leaders in education, in sports, in medicine, in law, every aspect or every career you can imagine. Clifton and his colleagues at Gallup went out and pulled these people to understand better what they're good at. That, you know, that appreciative inquiry approach, and they distilled all that work down into 34 different themes. You can think about a theme as a natural inclination. It is what a person is both practiced at, and is their like go-to way to talk about something or go-to way to behave. They then reorganized these 34 themes into 4 main domains that organize those ideas in a larger umbrella. It makes it a little easier to talk about and easier to think about. You could probably organize these in a number of ways, but this seems to work. I will also say that themes can shift over time. The results of the research showed that people's top 5 strongest themes can shift over time depending on their job responsibilities, how they spend their downtime, what major life events they may go through. Lots of things can affect your top themes. So, but generally the stuff towards the top stays towards the top. It could shift around, and the stuff that stays towards the bottom or is at the bottom stays towards the bottom, which really shows that there's this natural inclination towards some specific stuff, but the way that you practice and the way that you work can affect what you're good at any one time. For me, my top 5 last time I took it, which was a while ago at this point, are connectedness, relator, input, adaptability, and learner, which puts me very squarely in relationship building and strategic thinking. So I'm not going to talk about the themes themselves through the rest of the presentation because there's a lot of them. They are pretty self-explanatory in their naming scheme, but if you're curious, you can find out more on the Clifton Strengths website. I will talk about the domains though, so I want to review really quickly what each one what each one means. So on the left we have executing. That is your administrative duties. These are your like go-to doers, the people that have their paperwork in order, people with dominant executing themes just really know how to make things happen. Influencing is more your traditional like leadership skills. These are people that know how to take charge, speak up, and make sure the team is heard. They're really, if you know someone with a really strong, dominant personality in your friend group, they're probably very strong in the influencing domain. Relationship building is more the empathetic, trying to make connections with people. People dominant with these themes have the ability to build strong relationships. They can hold a team together and make the team greater than the sum of its parts. They're good at identifying what other people are good at and adapting that to whatever team structure they happen to be in at that moment. And then finally, on the far right, we've got strategic thinking, which is people with dominant strategic thinking themes help teams consider what they could be. They absorb and analyze information that can inform better decisions. So they pull in lots of information from different sources and collect all of that information to try to make guesses about what's going to work in the future, what's going to work right now. They also are pretty good at looking backwards to then predict out to the future. Like I said, my themes are pretty strong in relationship building and strategic thinking. 2 that have not changed for me are relator and learner. And this sort of makes sense. It has a lot to do with the work that I do every day. That's just what I'm practiced at. So it's the stuff that stays towards the top for me. I'm good at it and I practice it daily. So it tends to be strong. I should probably retake the assessment at some point just to see how things have shifted since my grad school work, but that'll happen eventually. So what does all this have to do with playing games? I wanted to review Clifton Strengths as a framework because I think especially these domains are a good way into looking at how you can be a better leader. If you can identify what sort of domain you feel like is strong in your life, then that gives you a blueprint to find activities where you can practice your themes in that domain. The more you practice, the stronger your theme becomes, and the more skilled you are at using that theme to enhance your leadership. Whether it's getting better at executing and learning how to plan effectively, and you know, whether that's like writing effective notes or even like scheduling with a group, or maybe you're looking to enhance your relationship building skills. You need to be more of a people person, or you want to be better at that. That really affects what sort of opportunity you want to look for when you're trying to better your own skills. So how does that work for gaming? Really, sports and tabletop games, video games, have a number of ways that you can practice each one of these domains. For executing, that could be being better at keeping a regular practice or game schedule. Anyone that has played Dungeons and Dragons for longer than 1 or 2 sessions knows how difficult it can be to get a group together at a consistent time every week or every other week. That's an executing skill. If you can get better at that and better at convincing people to play all at the same time, be a better leader in other ways that you have to use executing. That could also be like getting into the zone if you're on basketball court or something, or even just knowing the rules of the game that you're playing. If you know the rules, then it is easier to spend your mental energy on other stuff. Influencing is probably the easiest one to practice with any sort of game or sport. This could be empowering your teammates, speaking up if like the ref made a bad call or something. That could help you practice influencing. In general, promoting competitiveness, whether that's some StarCraft match or flag football on the IM fields. Like influencing is, like I said, it is the traditional stuff you think of as leadership, so it's easier to find ways to practice that. For relationship building, if you're looking for a way to learn how to connect with people better, any team sport is going to be great for that. Any team game, maybe you're looking for something cooperative like Pandemic, that you're all working together to create a solution to a problem, right? It ensures team cohesion. You can learn how to build community, and you can also intuit better when someone's hurt. DMing for a Dungeons and Dragons campaign is actually fantastic for this, because you have to intuit what your players are feeling at the moment, and create or move the story forward in a way that isn't harmful and addresses harm if it did happen. Lastly, strategic thinking. That is also maybe easier to see. You're deciding on plays, trying to predict your opponent, finding creative uses for the rules, trying to predict out what's going to happen in the future. So really, if you give it a little bit of thought, there is a way to practice your themes in the domain that you're dominant in really any game that you play. I will say, you should be intentional about which games or sports or activities in general you select in order to practice. I'd put a little bit of thought into it, because the activity you select is going to dictate what sort of themes and domains are easier to practice or not. For example, if you're looking to enhance your relationship building skills, I would probably stick to team sports. You can definitely practice relationship building at any time in your life, but it's going to be easier if there's other people around. So a solo sport or a single player game, maybe not the best way to practice that. If you're looking for something influencing, then you probably want something where you're going to be in a traditional leadership role, where you're going to try to try to enhance other people and empower them. You can definitely do that without being like a team captain or something. It is easier to do in those roles though. If you're looking to enhance your strategic thinking skills, then I highly recommend any sort of role or any sort of turn-based strategy game, any strategy game really. If you're looking for really those like baseline strategic thinking skills, then anything that's turn-based strategy, like the Civilization franchise, or a number of tabletop games like chess, it's a very classic example. All of those are great for enhancing strategic thinking. If, however, you're looking to enhance your strategic thinking in a more live situation, this would help a lot with executing as well. Then I would look more at real-time strategy games like StarCraft, or any sports that are in a live situation. So I would take some time to take stock of the ways that you want to enhance your skills, and that will determine what sort of games you want to try to go play or opportunities you want to find. If you're looking for more information in depth about these domains, then I highly recommend you check out the Clifton Strengths website. They have a video for each one of the themes that talks about what they are. There's a lot of free information. It's just the assessment itself is a paid assessment. If you are wondering what opportunities you can get involved with at UNLV, you're looking for a way to enhance your leadership, and are not already in a student org that you can do that in, there's some super easy ways to find out what opportunities are available to you. So the easiest way is to log into the Involvement Center. If you go to the Organizations tab, there is a list of every organization that's registered at UNLV, and those organizations have specific categories tagged associated with them. So if you search the categories list, there is one called Games and Gaming. That'll list all of our like tabletop and video game student organizations. We have organizations that really run a wide range, from Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop role-playing games to traditional games like chess and more and newer games like 8-Bit does a lot of video gaming. You can find that entire list on the Involvement Center, and a shout out to those organizations. There are some fantastic gaming student orgs. You can also find a list of all of the sport clubs on that same page on a different category. There are a wide range of sport clubs as well. The rec does do some work with them as well, but they are fantastic organizations that you'll be able to find pretty much any sport or activity that you want. If you can't find it within the student orgs, especially if you're looking for some live sport, then I highly recommend you check out the IM offerings at the campus rec. Especially in non-COVID times, they have some really fantastic offerings. Really anything and everything. And if they don't have the offering that you're looking for, just ask, and they'll probably start an IM league for that specific sport if you can get enough interest. They're really good about working with the student population to figure out what's popular and what you all actually want to play. So I highly recommend both of those resources. If you can't find what you're looking for, then like I said, if it's a sport, you can ask the rec, and they'll probably look into creating some sort of IM league. And if you're looking for tabletop gaming, you are also able to start your own student organization on that topic. It is super easy. You just need to grab a couple of people that are interested in the same thing, and fill out the registration process at the beginning of the semester. We would love to see more gaming student organizations and you know, that world, partially because it is a great transferable skill. I hope looking into this kind of stuff, you can start to understand how to talk about leadership in a new and different way. I hope this gives you some vocabulary to be able to talk about your own skills, especially in a job interview situation. Those hobbies that you have, you think they're just hobbies, that can help land you a job. It's so important to understand how to talk about your own skills and experiences that you've had that help you understand the world around you better. And gaming is a fantastic, if underappreciated, way to do that. Really, any way that you can display leadership is, it shows up in gaming, whether that's you know, managing your Dungeons and Dragons group to have a regular schedule and make sure that everyone's having a good time, or you know, managing your frisbee golf team, right? Any sport, any game has some connection to leadership and those baseline skills that are really important to leading the people around you. Well, that is all I have. Short and sweet, but I do hope that you all have at least learned some resources to be able to talk about your leadership in a more proficient way.
Craig, that was awesome. Thank you so much. I know I learned a lot. I love having guest presenters come in because I always get so much out of them. So while we wait for individuals, just type into the chat or the Q&A if you have any questions. While we wait for this to come in, I definitely had one come up that I thought of maybe I would start the question section with, which is the idea of, I think there's a lot of stereotypes about what a gamer is and what that experience, those stereotypes look like. Can you maybe talk about how do you help others get past, you know, I think about, like, if I'm going to talk about my experience running my Dungeons and Dragons group, how do I speak about that in a way that gets past those stereotypes? Is that something maybe you can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question. I think in recent years, we've started to see that stereotype dissipate a little bit, which is awesome. There have been some really prominent, like, bros that get involved in role-playing games online. Joe, oh man, I always forget his last name. That's a great example, though.
Joe
Yes, thank you. He was a reoccurring character in the really prominent Dungeons and Dragons online game Critical Role. He was in their season 1 a couple of times. So I think it's dissipating, but there are definitely still people that have a really strong stigma against some of those, like, nerdier games. My best advice is just be unapologetically yourself. Talk about what you love, and if you come into the conversation with the love and passion for the thing and aren't embarrassed but are, like, you know, just talking about yourself, that'll show through. And honestly, if someone is going to judge you for the things that you enjoy in your life, that tells you something about that person as well. I'm never going to tell you to not accept a job because someone thought you were too much of a nerd. But that is, a job interview is a two-way conversation, and if someone is displaying to you that they have this stigma against something that you're really passionate about, that should factor into your decision making for that organization as well.
I really love that perspective. I love that idea. I always love to say, let your freak flag fly. Like, be unapologetically yourself. That's such a great way to say it. Like, there's no, you know, there's only one you, and that you is awesome. And if someone doesn't like that, then that's on them, not you. So I love that perspective. Yeah. Okay, looks like we had a question come in. I was writing it down a little bit. So can you expand a little bit on how to talk about these experiences in a job interview? Can you maybe give an example or something like that? You know, I think we have a lot of our some org leaders here, especially as a leader of an organization. How can you take that leadership of your organization, not just within the gaming, but leading the organization, to enhance that job interview question? Yeah,
absolutely. I will say it is easier if you actually go take an assessment. It doesn't have to be StrengthsFinder. There are tons of free ones available online. But as long as you have some tool to help you have conversation, right? You need the language to be able to talk about your leadership, and that's why those sorts of assessments are useful, because they give you language. If you're looking for some more specifics, I always write down the question in a job interview, and just as a way to give me time to think for a second. But when you're writing down that question, like I would pick a couple of themes from Strengths Quest or whatever assessment. Go ahead and write down a couple of words that pop into your mind. Things that you've seen in your assessments before, and that'll help you streamline the language that you're using in that conversation. You know, you can really draw on anything. I would honestly set out a couple answers ahead of time for questions you think you're gonna receive. If you don't know what interview questions look like, there are some amazing resources at UNLV to help you practice that kind of stuff. But definitely write out some questions ahead of time. Think about examples that you could use to answer a few different questions, and you can draw from really any experience, whether that's running your student organization or playing the games that your student organization are playing. Those two things are both great ways to bring examples into your own like job interviews.
That's great. And I'm going to use that as a free plug for our April RSO workshop. I'm going to see what you did there. So our April RSO workshop is going to be, we have someone from the Career Center coming in to talk about how to translate your leadership experience in your student organizations into job interviews, cover letters, anything related to the job search, and how you can kind of translate that experience. So I'm going to use this as a free plug for that. I think we had a D&D player ask a question to see if you can maybe give something personal about maybe how your experience as a dungeon master has kind of influenced your own leadership.
Sure, yeah. Well, one way it's enhanced my leadership is to help me learn how to be a better executor. I used to have that in my top 5, but it dropped out in grad school. And it has trying to organize a weekly game with like 5 or 6 guys that all have different schedules is difficult. We use Discord a lot for that, which is a fantastic tool. If you've never used Discord before, it's a great way to chat with your friends and organize. So that has definitely helped me just like be a more organized person. But it's also, I think, enhanced my relationship building, because I've got a couple of groups with people that I either did not know coming in, they're friends of friends, or I've just learned more about the people that I already know. When you're role playing, it's a great way to work through personal problems. Like you bring that into your characters. So it's also been a great way for me to learn more about my friends and help them work through problems in their own lives. I also play as like a player in a couple of campaigns, and there's one where the character has lost his parents, which is something that is important to my life. I lost my dad a few years ago, and playing through that character has helped me like internalize that own struggle, and helped me learn how to like talk about that with other people as well. It's been super useful. So really, I could go on about different ways that my D&D campaigns have helped me out, but they're fun, they're educational, and they're just generally making me a better person. I love it.
Thanks for that really personal answer. As someone who's also lost a parent, that really resonates with me as well. I think in general, like something I've gotten out of this is, this all seems very prescient right now, considering the pandemic and how we're all separated from each other. And gaming really gives us all an opportunity to connect in a way that feels intentional right now, because so much about this experience of us giving this presentation in a virtual world doesn't feel normal. But interacting in a game is the same now. It's probably the same now as it is pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, once we can all be together. So I think there's a lot that like this time will maybe teach us all about that experience, and that will continue to relate particularly to like the game playing world.
Yeah, I agree. There's definitely something special about sitting around a table with your friends, but this stuff is accessible in the pandemic world. If you want specific resources for Dungeons and Dragons online, please contact me on that email on the screen. It's craig.shook@unlv.edu. I have lots of recommendations. I've been at this for like 9 months in the pandemic now, and the group that I DM for is actually international. We've got some guys from the UK that play with us as well. So if you have questions about how to make that work, please let me know. I'm more than happy to walk you through my setup and things I've learned.
Awesome. Thank you. It looks like that's all the questions. I'm going to do one more free plug before we close out. Craig talked about the Involvement Center. As a reminder, the Involvement Center is our online platform for all student organizations on campus. It's involvementcenter.unlv.edu, or if you don't remember that and you just want to go to the UNLV website and search Involvement Center, it'll come up. You should be able to see a profile of all of our student organizations. Like Craig said, you can filter through or search by keyword if there's something specific. If there's a different geekdom or nerddom that you're really interested in that's not gaming, whatever it is that makes you you and is the thing you're passionate about, I hope you're able to find a student organization that helps you connect to that, whether it be gaming or a sport or your faith, or whatever the case may be. We always just like to give a plug for all of our student organizations and make sure you're checking out the Involvement Center. Well, I just want to say a big heartfelt thank you to Craig. This was awesome. I really loved this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it too.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Marnie. This is great.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you everyone. We'll see you later.